Hi, welcome to this episode of Digital Discoveries, and today we're going to be looking at the camera app that's included on your iPad. So if you've got an iPad or if you've got classes where the teacher is asking you to use iPads, then you need to be aware of the camera app and how it works, because we want people using the camera app. And so if you, let's jump right in and see what it looks like. If you have your iPad up and running, the camera app is pretty darn obvious. It looks like a camera lens, and it's got the word camera underneath it. And so once you find that, it's usually on the very first screen. And once you get there, then you just turn it on. And so I've got my iPad hooked up here, and I'm going to try very hard to keep from getting it disconnected. So and we're going to walk through all the different parts of the camera app. When you click on the camera app, what's going to happen first is that you're going to turn on the camera. So I'm going to show what the studio looks like. I'm walking around the studio. And so there's actually two cameras on your iPad. There's actually two cameras. There's one that's facing away from the iPad on the back side of it. That's this camera right here. You see that little hole right there? That's right there. There's another camera that's facing toward you, so you could actually record yourself, and you don't have to like stand in front of the iPad like that. And so the way to get that camera is, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can probably see it better up there. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little camera with some arrows that switch around, and if you hit that, that turns the camera around. And that camera is actually right there. It's in a little bit different position. Where's my camera, guys? It's right there. That's the camera that's looking at you. So now you can see I'm looking at the camera. Now I'm turning it back, and it's looking at me. And so it's kind of scary that we got all these pictures of me going. That's not too cool. And so what I really want to do now is I want to turn it back around so I'm focusing. So now I'm looking out at the TV studio. We can see what's going on around the TV studio. So you can see that we got something going on. Now, I'm looking right at the camera that's looking at me right this minute. You can see that camera sitting right there. And so what I want to do is, you can actually focus. You can tell the device where you want it to focus, where you want it to be. And to do that, you just take your finger and you put it where you want it to show up. And if we could pull up our little iPad picture here, you can see that no matter where you put your finger, like a little crosshair will come up, and that's where the camera will focus. So everything in this room is pretty close, and so it's really hard to focus on it. But if you're in a situation where somebody's close to the camera or somebody's far away from the camera, that's where you would want to focus, especially if you've got something very close. You can actually focus very closely. I'm holding this right close to my keyboard right here, and I want to focus it on the letter A, so you can see that it allows you to zoom in. Now, also, another cool thing about the camera feature is that you can actually zoom in and get even closer. So notice that when I tap the screen, something comes up at the bottom. It's got a minus sign and a plus sign. If I hold that, you can see I've got a zoom right there. So I can zoom in. I could zoom pretty close, but usually if I zoom real close, it'll get out of focus, and then I'll have to move back a little bit. So we have a really good zoom feature on these cameras. And that only works if you're using the still camera. So I'm going to take a picture here of my camera, and I take a picture, and that's what my picture looks like. And as soon as I take it, that's what my picture looks like, and I can look at it. It's not the best because we're kind of like in some some weird settings here. Now, if I want to zoom in, say I just want to zoom in on the camera's lens, I can actually zoom in on that, and I can take a picture there. But what happens is, in dark settings, it's going to get all kind of pixelated. So you really want to take pictures in really good light if you have that choice. So that's how you take a picture. We'll talk a little bit later about where those pictures go. We'll talk another setting, but this is just how to use the camera itself. So now that's the camera and how you take a picture. But there's another camera that's on the iPad, and that other camera is a video camera. And to get to the video camera, all you want to do is you want to, in the lower right-hand corner, is you want to switch it from a still camera to a video camera. And see, so now you can barely tell the difference. You can barely tell the difference in what I'm taking a picture of. But what we're doing, we're actually doing a little experiment here. I'm going to hold that up right there just for a second. And you can see that we're doing this experiment way over there where you can see this iPad. And we're actually recording today's show on that iPad. We're using that as one of the cameras. And we're going to actually compare the video from our fancy $15,000 cameras compared to our iPad that's, $399. So you can actually record, and all you got to do to record is you want to hit that red button at the bottom, and that starts the recording. Then in the upper right-hand corner, once you start doing that, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, it'll tell you how long your movie's going. And so I've got this movie. It's not a very exciting movie. It's a very boring movie, but it lasted about 10 seconds, and if I want to review it, so you can actually go back and review those. So now let's talk a little bit about how to hold the camera and what to do. So I'm going to actually disconnect my camera and my iPad here from all my stuff. All right. Now, let's talk about holding the camera properly, holding the iPad as a camera properly. A lot of people want to hold it like this. And that's good if you're taking a still photograph that's going to be long ways like that. But for video, if you're making a video, you want to hold the camera like this. You want it to be wide angle. And there's a reason for that, because when you save a video that's in this format, that's like that, when you hold a video like that, it looks terrible when you play it back because it takes up just the middle part of whatever screen that you're using. So you always want to hold the camera like that. You always want to hold the iPad like that. Now, here's a trick that I learned a long time ago on how to hold this iPad. Your iPad has two buttons on it. Or it's got the home button. If you always have the home button on the right-hand side, if you always have that home button on the right-hand side, your lens for the camera is always going to be up here. Always. And that's the best place for the lens to be, because most people hold their iPads like that. And so if you hold your iPad like that and the lens is right there, you're not going to cover up your lens. If you've got the iPad held the other way and you're holding it like that, all of a sudden you have to hold it all kind of weird so you're not covering up the lens. So if you always hold the iPad with the home button on the right-hand side, the lens will always be in the upper left-hand corner. That's the way you want it to be. So how do you make a movie recording yourself so it's not all jiggly and not all running around? Does it take a lot of money to hold up a tripod? Do you have to go out and buy some expensive piece of equipment? No, you don't. Let's look and see a very inexpensive way to hold up an iPad. Over here, I told you earlier that we had set up our iPad to record what we were doing, and we're actually going to intersperse this video into our show today, so you can see what it's like. But I'm using this little egg crate kind of thing as our tripod. So all you're looking for when you're holding up an iPad is you just want to have something so it'll hold in place. And so you can see here that I just have my iPad, and the iPad's a little bit thinner than the holes on this device here, this crate. So we just put some napkins in there to hold it in place. So we have napkins in the front, we have napkins in the back. We're just holding it in place, and that's how we're holding this in place. And so now I press the record button, and now I can stand in front of my iPad and I can talk to my iPad, or I could actually have an interview with somebody. I can do all different kinds of things using the iPad camera. But we wanted to make sure that you were aware of the iPad camera. Teachers, we want our kids using the cameras a lot. We want them making video. We want them using the the still images, we want them recording stuff, we want them to use these devices to create content. Students, we want you guys to learn how to hold these things properly, or even come up with your own way to hold them straight on a desk or some kind of tabletop so they don't flop over while you're talking. So that's the camera app for the iPad. It's a very simple thing. Probably most of you can figure it out without having somebody like me tell you how to do it. But hopefully you got a few little pointers in this one on how to use your camera. And I hope to see some of the coolest movies ever made done with the iPads that are out here in EPISD. So thanks for joining me for this episode of Digital Discoveries.